Right.
Jiang, is adaptation part of the conversation, or is it still focused on reducing carbon pollution and solving that side of the equation?
Well, I think different mayors have different challenges, right? On the East Coast, of course, there's rising awareness about that. But China is vast. There are a lot of inland provinces and cities. These are not as on their consciousness as well. And plus, I think there's a very different issue at hand people are dealing with. Most cities are experiencing very rapid expansion of the city proper. And how do you restructure a new city, integrate a new town with old town is a tremendous challenge. In some ways, we find we are racing against time because people just don't wait until you figure out how to solve a sustainable design for a 10 million metropolis in China, right? So people are building every day, and as we speak, 1,000 cities are being constructed at the same time. So people are racing against time to make sure that best practices are adopted in those cities. And one of the fundamental challenge is how you should reshape the city in a way that's going to fit our future need. I think the last panel there was a conversation about whether fighting growth is helpful at the moment, and how to reshape the growth in a way that's the most environmental friendly for us. In a way that we characterize the U.S. development pattern as sort of low-density sprawl. For many of us, the pattern is equally bad in China. Instead of a low-density sprawl, it's a high-density sprawl. So Beijing is very typical, right? In the 80s, there's a second ring road, then there's a third ring road, and there's the first ring road, the fifth ring road. Now there's a sixth ring road. There's even more being planned. You can see the urban core just keep expanding without very much serious consideration of how do you restructure a city, how you want to expand, right? So and that's actually one of the fundamental challenges we're dealing with any particular city. How do you reshape the growth in a way that you can achieve the kind of friendliness for urban residents, reduces congestion and transportation energy use, etc.
And one of the solutions to that, McKinsey had a very extensive report on China calling for concentrated urbanization, 15 super cities with 25 million people. It's kind of hard to imagine more density in Chinese cities, but the alternative to high-density sprawl is even greater density in the inner area. Is that right?
Well, I have not read the report carefully. I can't comment on their concept. But I don't think that density itself is the solution. You need to have a much more nuanced understanding how you can hold the people with the features that make the city attractive for people to live, right? To have 30-story tall towers across the city is not a solution for our future cities, the one we see in some areas in China or Hong Kong, in New York. So we find in our practice, so traditionally our foundation mostly make grants to other institutions in China, but we actually have a affiliate design center in China helping mayors design cities. In our practice in the last 7-8 years, we find that you can actually accommodate a lot of people with a very differentiated density development, right? So the focus really is really about changing your design focus to serve the need of people instead of build a city, instead of thinking about building a product. I think that's part of the fallacies. How do you build a city can hold the greatest number of people? You need to build a city that satisfies the need of the people and make it the most attractive. And that's how you want to think of the cities.
We can certainly understand how they get there with the migration that you've talked about. 300 million people expected. There's been 300 million people before them. It's like there's this great inflow of people. It's natural to think about, okay, we can big as containers as possible to get all these people into, and that's how you end up with these 30-story towers as far as the eye can see.
Yeah, well, in fact, we're finding in some areas they're zoning for too many people. There may not be even need for that many housing or office space. So I think that density, greater density is not necessarily the better solution.
Ellen Lu, you want to get in here?
I think I totally agree with you. in the sense that to design the city, you really need to design a livable city. I guess it's very hard for us to imagine a city of the kind of density that they have, but if they don't grow higher density, they run out of land. They're only about 12% farmable land, farmland in China, because they have far less land that is ready. It's good, suitable for habitation. So we have to go higher density. But then how do you make higher density livable? That's the challenge. And I want to take that sort of 30-story towers, endless sea of 30-story towers. It's not livable. But it doesn't mean that we don't build higher. You may build 60 floors, 50 floors, 30 floors, 20 floors, create variety, create hierarchy so that they don't have not one size, not one solution, and repeat it 3 million times. And that will just make it different. Concentrate where density needs to be. How do you create urban forms that allow those thriving nodes that we would like to see? Yeah. It's harder to rebuild Oakland, but in China, they always have a lot of people in the center. So how do you make it livable and people want to enjoy the city and not want to drive somewhere? And there's so many design things that we can do to make high density livable.